Last Friday, President Bola Tinubu presented the 2026 budget proposal of 58.18 trillion naira to a joint session of the National Assembly. President Tinubu said the appropriation bill titled Budget of Consolidation, Renewed Resilience and Shared Prosperity will deliver the full promise of renewed hope agenda with plan to ensure that the 2026 budget is implemented strictly in line with the appropriated details and timelines. Our sincere apologies for the lack of audio in that report. Now, with a record 5.41 trillion allocated to defense and 2.48 trillion to health, the 2026 spending plan signals a renewed focus on security and human capital at a time of economic strain, insecurity, and rise in living costs. But the big numbers also raise big questions like, is this budget fiscally sustainable? And what does it mean for businesses, investors, and the average Nigerian? Well, joining us on Business Express through telephone is an economist, Dr. Solomon Gushibet of the University of Jos. Hello, Dr. Gushibet.
Hello, how are you?
I'm great, sir. Good to have you on the program.
I barely hear you.
Hello, Doc.
Yes, good morning.
Very well. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
All right. You're welcome to the program.
Thank you.
All right. Now, an unprecedented budget of 58.47 trillion naira. Is Nigeria entering a new era of big government spending, or is this a necessary response to current challenges?
Well, thank you, presenter. I think is Nigeria entering a new era of big government spending? Yes, in nominal terms, this is one of Nigeria's largest budgets ever, signaling a substantial government role in the economy. You know, Nigeria's economy depends largely on the public sector. The private sector is still, struggling to come up. So the budget priorities, or the budget prioritizes security, infrastructure, education, health, and debt servicing, with almost half of total spending going to debt service and capital projects if you go through the budget. However, much of the rise reflects catching up after years of rolled over budgets. We've been doing rolled over budgets and not just new spending. So security and debt costs take very large shares of the budget, which can give the impression of big government, even if service delivery remains weak.
Yeah,
I think it is left for the government to prove that.
Yeah, talking about security, 5.41 trillion naira is allocated to defense, which is one of the highest ever. Now, from a fiscal perspective, is this justified? Do you think increased defense spending can realistically curb insecurity without deeper reforms in intelligence, governance, and accountability?
Well, you mean 5.41 trillion naira allocated to defense?
Yes.
Well, it is one of the highest ever, truly. Partially, I will say yes, but only conditionally. Let me say so. Nigeria faces widespread insecurity that directly hurts growth, revenues, and investment. Farmers hardly go to farm. That is why you can see that food inflation is on the rise in the country. Even though we are experiencing some, decline in food inflation, but in real sense, farmers are hurt. Imagine a farmer that bought a fertilizer at 56,000 naira per bag, and he's now selling at loss. So there is danger of food insecurity in the future, if you look at it carefully. So I think from a strict fiscal lens, the justification, weakens if outcomes don't improve, especially given the rising debt and competing social needs of the country. So I think a lot should be done to justify the budget.
All right, let's now talk about health and human capital aspects of the budget. Health is to receive 2.48 trillion naira. Doc, is this enough to reverse medical tourism, brain drain, and poor healthcare outcomes?
Okay, I think before we go to health, let me add my voice on this issue of defense. We have increased budget for defense now. So I want you to know that no spending alone, will solve insecurity in Nigeria. Without intelligence reform, interagency coordination in the proper sense of it, and then maybe governance reforms and accountability. So the main thing here is accountability. Would we be accountable? Would we be able to stem out corruption? Higher defense budgets risk becoming high cost and low impact if these issues are not checked. So Nigeria's insecurity is as much about institutional weakness and local governance failures. And I think it is about firepower. So we need to look at that critically and see how we can, utilize the huge allocation to the security sector. So it is not sufficient on its own, a huge budget. I think security outcomes, not budget size, determine fiscal justification. And if that is so, I would now attempt to answer the question you threw concerning
health.
The allocation to health, which is 2.48 trillion out of 54 trillion. I think my answer is no, it is not enough on its own. Why? Because 2.48 trillion falls short of the global standard. So as a share, as a share of total budget and GDP, health spending remains below levels needed to transform outcomes or meet international benchmarks. So medical tourism, for instance, is driven by trust, quality, and specialist capacity, not just funding size. So brain drain is, mainly about pay, working conditions, equipment, career progression, and governance, not allocation alone. So what the allocation can realistically achieve, for instance, for Nigeria, it can stabilize the system if properly implemented, and perhaps improve basic services, infrastructure, and then drug availability in our hospitals. So it may slow down deterioration that we are currently experiencing in the country, but it will not reverse long-standing trends anyway.
All right, Doc, let's now talk about fiscal framework and projections. The president is projecting oil production at 1.84 million barrels per day and the crude oil benchmark of $64.85 per barrel. And he called these conservative assumptions. Now, given Nigeria's history with oil production targets, how realistic are these figures, and what happens if we fall short again?
Well, I have observed, I've gone through the budget, and I observed that the revenue assumptions are actually optimistic, but they carry tangible risks, in my opinion. First, let's look at oil revenue. Execution risk here is high because oil output has historically underperformed due to theft, pipeline vandalism, operational issues, crude oil theft, and oil price shocks in the international market. So even modest shortfalls in production or prices can blow a hole in revenues given oil's continued importance in the Nigerian economy. Second, let's look at non-oil revenue and the current tax reforms. To me, the direction is right, but timing is the problem. Tax reforms, improved compliance, and digital collection will raise revenue quite okay, but not overnight. We must note that. So behavioral change, legal adjustments, and administrative capacity take time. So near-term projections may be overstated. This is my fear with the budget.
Okay, so what does this budget mean for MSMEs, investors, and job creation? Do you think ordinary Nigerians will feel the impact of this budget in 2026, or will inflation erode its benefits?
Okay, for micro, small, and medium enterprises and for investors,
Yes.
let's look for micro, small, and medium enterprises. To me, there is limited direct relief. What do I mean? The budget offers infrastructure and credit schemes, but high inflation, high energy costs, and high interest rates still dominate MSME realities. And if that is so, have those challenges been addressed? If those challenges have not been addressed, I think this is just a mere window dressing. So benefits depend on execution and access, not announcements. Now, to the investors, there are mixed signals to me because large capital spending and reforms are positives, but deficits, revenue risks, foreign exchange uncertainty, and policy credibility keep risk premiums high. So these are the issues to look at because investor confidence hinges on macro stability and consistency, not budget size. They are not looking at the size of the budget. They are looking at macroeconomic stability of the country and how safe their investments would be if they bring it into the country. So these are the issues to look at more critically. Now for job creation, for instance, it will be an indirect and slow one because most jobs would come via construction, services, and supply chains, not immediate mass employment to me. And then without private sector expansion, job gains will be modest. And I think the budget should emphasize on private sector participation.
All right, Dr. Solomon Gushibet
Yeah.
of the University of Jos. Thank you very much,
No,
sir.
of NIPS. I mean NIPS.
Of NIPS. Oh, thanks for the correction. Thank you very much, sir, for your time. All right, moving on.